What's good, my little Halloweeners? How are you guys doing? I want to wish you a very happy Halloween. I appreciate you guys for clicking on the movie mass. I am His Holiness, your brother Jay. Father 4K, the Bishop of Blumhouse, the Criterion Choir Boy, the Vicar of Vinegar Syndrome, all of those things. I said vicar, okay? And I appreciate you clicking the buttons. I am celebrating in my own particular style. I got a pumpkin beanie on my head. That is handmade, sewn by my mother-in-law. That's a Joanne special right there. And I am wearing on my head in honor of this day. Put it over my movie yarmulke that I normally wear. This is the day. This is the day that we've all been waiting for. This is Halloween. Of course, some of us have been prepping for today for quite a long time, several months. I know that I have been spending the entire month of October really focused in on Halloween seasonal films and very, very related topics like Scream/Shout Factory and stuff like that that are at least tangential to like horror films. October is just the right time for it. And I think that Halloween is the right day to give you guys all a very special treat. Today, I'm going to be giving you an extra long video so that you can spend more time with me, your brother Jay, on Halloween, listening to my thoughts on the entirety of the Halloween franchise. So today in this video, I don't think I have enough beer here. I'm gonna have to get another one there. I'll cut and I'll come back with a new beer when I need one. But I'm gonna talk about each Halloween movie. I'm gonna give my thoughts. I can't go too in depth because this would be 10-hour long video. But what I will do is just kind of gloss over the franchise. I think this franchise especially, because it's been so long, ongoing. I mean, we're just at about 50 years of this franchise. A couple more years and we'll be at 50. The Halloween franchise will be 50 years old. So it's very long running. And as a result, I think it gives us a lot to talk about with regard to not just the individual films, the content, the style of each of the individual films, but of course, the overarching idea of franchise filmmaking in general, the idea of franchise fatigue. And I think when we talk about franchise fatigue in 2025, we're largely talking about superhero films. But certainly there was a point in time where we discussed franchise fatigue as it involved horror films. There were certainly times where horror films were a little less popular than they are currently, and people felt fatigued by some of these longer running franchises before they came back again. And so I think Halloween gives us a lot to talk about, both in terms of the individual films that we all know and love, maybe one or two of them that we hate. There's at least one in here that I'm going to talk about. You guys could probably already guess which one it is that I absolutely fucking hate. I'll get to that in a moment. But it also gives an opportunity to talk about, franchises as a whole and how all of these pieces fit together, and how Halloween and Michael Myers are represented across generations, because 50 years is a damn long time. It's passed through the hands of many production studios, and filmmakers have all taken cracks at Halloween, and so it gives us a lot to talk about. So this is going to be a little bit of a longer video. I hope that's okay with you. This is going to be longer than anything I've given my wife. I'm going to go in chronological order as well. I'm not ranking these movies. This is not a ranking. I don't have the stamina to do a ranking. So we're going to go in chronological order from release year. Okay, so we'll start with the original Halloween from 1978. And of course, you already know that I'm going to say this. It's an unimpeachable classic. I'm sorry, this pumpkin is getting in my eyes. At any rate, Halloween 1978 is as near perfect a film, I believe, as you're going to find, not just in the slasher subgenre of horror, but I think just general, like, latter half of the 20th century filmmaking in its entirety. I think it's a pretty, that's not to say that it is necessarily the best film, but what I am trying to say is that I do believe that in terms of both the creative vision and the execution, I think the original Halloween is about as close to perfect as you can reasonably expect human beings to get. So that's very high praise. I think it's a very praiseworthy film. It's a film that I think, if it weren't so good, it would be overrated. But the fact is, it's an incredibly good film which I think means it's rated. It's not underrated because people love the shit out of it, and it's not overrated either because it deserves the love that it gets. So it's right there in that perfect rated category. It's a very perfect film for this time of year, in my opinion. I know they didn't film it in the fall, but they still managed to capture this really great fall look. The daylight scenes have that perfect fall lighting. I know they brought in some leaves, but hey, the leaves are there. All right, they're not naturally occurring leaves. They're leaves that got shipped in or whatever, but I'm fine with that. I can suspend my disbelief because, again, I think they got the daylight look of autumn, of fall, pretty perfectly. And I also have to appreciate the lean, kind of restrained quality of the style of Halloween. Additionally, Michael Myers is perfectly calculating in the first Halloween as well. He sets everything up perfectly. He shows a cunning and intellect that I think they kind of forget about, or they do away with, they forego in the sequels to the film, because after this movie, after the first Halloween, he kind of becomes a bit of a mindless killing machine, especially from 4 on. You get in his way, he kills you. He walks into the police station, he kills all the police in part 4. I don't know how he manages to do that, go into a police station, kill all the cops there. It's pretty much unheard of, and he does so without using a machine gun or a bomb full of dynamite or anything like that. He takes out all these cops pretty much with his bare hands. He just turns into kind of a dumb killing machine. But what's important to keep in mind is that in the first Halloween, he stalks, he observes his prey, he gets a good idea of kind of who they are and what they're about. Sex, fornication, smoke and reefer, all the good stuff in life. And then he decides to punish them for it, but he sets everything up perfectly, leading Laurie Strode into this final work of art. In his brain, it's a work of art. It's this kind of sick, fucked up tableau that he kind of presents her with as if she's attending a haunted house. You know, he sets everything up from the very beginning, stealing the gravestone, stealing the headstone of Judith Myers, to set all of this up to kind of reenact this and enact this and put Laurie Strode through this. I think shows how much he's thinking ahead. He's not just a killing machine, but he's sort of plotting out this whole presentation and how he stashes the bodies and all of this stuff that I think he does a lot less of as we go forward. Particularly in those 80s and 90s sequels, he really just seems to kind of forget that aspect of himself, and I think it becomes a little bit less unique and enjoyable as a result. And so I think that's part of the greatness of the first Halloween. My only complaint, really, about the first Halloween, and it's a really minor complaint, but it's how stupid Michael Myers must look to the homeowners. Like in the daytime when he's stalking Laurie, you know, there's that shot on the sidewalk. I think they're walking to school. She and her friends are walking to school. There's that shot where he's sort of like leaning out. You know, the hedges are like right here, and he's just sort of leaning out. He's sort of mostly exposed, kind of his left foot is on the sidewalk. And here's an image of it, just so you can see what I'm talking about. But he's sort of half exposed or 3/4 exposed, and it's kind of creepy from our point of view. We see it from Laurie's point of view, kind of as she's down the sidewalk, you know, looking back. That's what he looks like. He's just this really creepy looking. He's already got the mask at that point. He's like creeping out of the hedges there, and it's really kind of frightening from our perspective. But imagine you're the homeowner. You're like, because there's a house on the other side of Michael. Like to Michael's right, there's a yard, there's a house, there's like some 50-year-old dude like drinking his coffee in the morning, like getting ready to take his coffee shit. You know, that coffee, it acts pretty quick. You start drinking that morning coffee and your bowels are like, dog, it's time to go hit the restroom. But imagine you're like drinking that coffee and you're looking at it, you're like, what is this 23-year-old dude in a mask? Why is he halfway on my lawn? Like, get the fuck off my grass, asshole. You know what I mean? Like, he must look ridiculous to a homeowner who's just seeing him kind of stalk around the backyards and the hedges and stuff. I imagine my own neighborhood. And if I look out the window and I'm having my morning coffee and I'm just seeing this dude in my yard that I've never seen before, I'm sticking my head out the window. I'm like, fucko, you got the wrong address or what, asshole? And, you know, maybe in the case of Michael Myers, that draws his attention towards me, but I'm looking out there and I'm seeing a skinny 23-year-old kid, and I'm thinking, I'm gonna get out there and fuck you up in a minute if you don't get off my yard, all right? Son, keep stepping with your weird-ass mask. You don't think I'll bust your ass? Come at me with a French knife. And all of the stuff that I just said is going to, let's put a pin in that. I want to return to that general sentiment of me walking outside of my yard and kicking a 23-year-old's ass for standing in my yard and not getting the fuck on when I told him to. Let's put a pin in that because I am going to circle back to that in several minutes. Now, it's a small complaint, but I do like to think of those moments when Michael is like creepily stalking Laurie from a different perspective, where it's like, I'm just looking at this guy's ass. What's he doing in my yard? And that's really a very minor complaint. Like I said, it doesn't make this less of a perfect film. It just means there's always multiple perspectives to look at something. And, as scary as Michael Myers must look to a 16-year-old girl or 17, however old Laurie is, as he's kind of creeping out and looking at her, he must look really ridiculous to somebody else who's like, I'm not intimidated by a 23-year-old dude standing in my lawn at 9 in the morning while I'm trying to drink my coffee. I'm running late to work. Get off of my lawn, son. I'd put him to work on the pool. I'd be like, if you're here to clean the pool, fine. Get the net and get up there and start cleaning the pool. Anyway, Halloween 1, perfect. You can't go wrong with Halloween 1. If you only watch Halloween 1, I think the first Halloween is the only one that I will watch every single year without fail. The other Halloweens, I'll kind of catch them as they come on or whenever I feel like it, or what my wife says, hey, let's pop on Halloween Ends. Oh, maron, okay, we'll pop on Halloween Ends. But by and large, the first Halloween is really the one that I'm watching this every year. Maybe Halloween 3 is right up there too. But Halloween 1, I will regret if I miss watching that one. And I'll watch that one usually on Halloween night, maybe late the night before Halloween. But Halloween is an unimpeachable classic. We wouldn't have a damn near 50-year franchise if it weren't for the first Halloween, and you all know that I'm right. Anyway, we move on to Halloween 2, the first Halloween 2. This is Halloween 2A, I guess? I don't know. It's kind of ridiculous when, the franchise goes on long enough that you get to name something Halloween multiple times. You get to name it Halloween 2 multiple times. Anyway, I like Halloween 2 as well. I actually like the sister twist. I'm going to come out on the internet in front of everybody. I'm going to come out of this particular closet, okay? I like the sister twist. I think it's a little bit weird, but I think it works. Or it's also possible, let me recognize my own bias. It's also possible that I've lived with it my whole life, so maybe I'm just at peace with it. This movie came out the same year that I did. So I am as old as Halloween 2. Halloween 2 is as old as I am. So I have literally lived with the sister twist for my entire life. So it could just be that I'm at peace with it. They were siblings my entire childhood growing up. And so learning that they're not siblings in 2018 really didn't unring that bell for me. And I do like how the kills are a little bit more visceral, maybe a little bit more creative. It's not just sticking somebody with something or choking somebody out. He does get a little bit more creative with the things that are at his disposal at a hospital. He utilizes the environment and what would be available at a hospital. He uses a scalpel at one point, which shouldn't be too surprising, but he burns that lady up in the boiling shit, and so there's a lot of interesting. I think he uses the end of a claw hammer, which at this point, we've seen Old Boy, so it's not super new in 2025, but in 1981, and even in my childhood prior to Old Boy being in existence, obviously the claw hammer was kind of a unique way to go. And it really just shows that Michael will use whatever he can get his hands on as long as it's not a gun. He'll try to impale you with a gun, as I'll discuss in a minute, but he will not actually pull the trigger. He won't load it with bullets and pull the trigger and fire it and shoot the bullet at you and kill you with a bullet. He will stab the gun through you, which doesn't even make as much sense as just beating someone to death with the butt of a gun. If you've ever held a shotgun before, you can hit somebody with the stock of a shotgun several times on the head, and they might conceivably die. It's akin to stepping on their head, curb stomping them, essentially. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself because I'm talking about Halloween 4. We're still supposed to be talking about part 2 right now. So I appreciate that they upped the sleaze, they upped the gore in Halloween 2, although with that, they do kind of veer away a little bit from the more restrained and artful quality of Halloween. The first Halloween, of course, is a little bit more of an artful film because they're not really relying on that kind of titillation to sell tickets. I think that pretty quickly after Halloween, they realized 16-year-olds will buy tickets to movies if we put tits and stabbings in them and maybe show the stabbings a little bit more and creative kills and pull this bitch's face skin off and stab her in the titties, and then we've sold 1 million tickets. So eventually they did realize that, and so they upped the sleaze factor. I would say that is one of the charms of 80s horror cinema that I like, is the sleaziness of the whole thing. And so you do get a little bit less artful quality in Halloween 2. That's okay, because again, it does feel like they're able to make a sequel with Halloween 2 that feels like a natural progression from the first one without being too much of a rehash. One of the risks with franchise filmmaking when you're making part 2, part 3, part 4, and you're going on through this whole franchise, you run the risk of either making a sequel that's too derivative, it feels too much like the previous one, to the point of being basically a copy, and then it's not as thrilling because it's not as original. We've seen this before. Or you take too many swings. You swing for the fences, and maybe what you wind up with, and this happens in Halloween, the Halloween franchise as well, but what you wind up with is something that is sort of the opposite of derivative, is now a wholly different animal. It's a different beast. It doesn't feel like it belongs anymore. I'll mention those. With Halloween 2, I think they did kind of manage to hit that sweet spot in between those two extremes, between carbon copying the original and making something that just doesn't even feel like itself anymore. You have Halloween 2, which I think they did a good job, and that's one reason I like Halloween 2 as much as I do, because it does feel like a good progression up from the first one. They up the ante with the narrative, they up the ante with the sleaze, with the gore, with the titties, all of the good stuff. It does feel a little, I will say that Halloween 2 feels a little bit less like the Halloween holiday because so much of it occurs in the hospital. So you don't get that like suburban feel to it as well. I miss that sort of suburban trick-or-treating feel, but there's a point where Halloween, the trick-or-treating part is over, right? If it's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, there's no more trick-or-treaters out. And of course, this film taking place right after the first one, it's happening probably, the majority of Halloween 2 is probably happening on November the 1st at this point. There's a point where, the first Halloween ends and it's probably pretty late at night. It's probably 10, 11 p.m. There's not much time left on the 31st. So it's weird to think about it, but logically speaking, the majority of Halloween 2 probably does take place on November the 1st because it's occurring after midnight. Of course, it's the same night. No one's slept yet, so it's fine. It makes sense. I still enjoy the movie, but it does have a little bit less of that sort of suburban trick-or-treating type of feel. There's no daytime scenes like the first one, so you don't get that lovely quality of daylight that I think is maybe a little subtle, but it does associate immediately with the fall and that quality of the daylight at that time of year. I think it's a tall order to follow up Halloween. It's a cornerstone of horror cinema. It's the archetypal slasher. Look at all the dog shit that followed. I mean, it's clear that they did pretty well with Halloween 2 when you consider Halloween Resurrection. I'll get back to that in a moment. Anyway, we then had Halloween 3 in 1982. Halloween 3, I can see why it wasn't very well received in its day. I mean, I think nowadays, people really love it. And I can understand that as well. But back in the day, part 2 was Michael Myers. It was the continuation of part 1. Why wouldn't part 3 be a continuation of part 2? That's where things get confusing. I think they did the wrong thing by having part 2 focus on Michael Myers and then start the anthology idea with part 3, because they've sort of set people's expectations for the sequels with part 2. When it had Laurie Strode back and Michael Myers is back and Loomis is back. And then with part 3, they go the anthology route and everyone's like, what the fuck, man? I understand, however, how it has come around in more recent years. I think the past decade has been very kind to Halloween 3. It's unfettered by comparisons to other movies in the series. It doesn't have Michael Myers. It doesn't have Laurie. It doesn't have Loomis. So it's kind of free in a sense. Halloween 3 is freed to do its own thing. You can hold it up and compare it to the other Halloween films, but only abstractly. It's not directly comparable in the way that you can take Halloween 1 and compare it to Halloween Resurrection. You can hold those up because they've got the same characters in them, and thus Halloween 3, it's free. And in that regard, I really think they should have continued to do the anthology thing. When I think about how freeing it is to eliminate or remove the characters of Laurie Strode and Michael Myers and Loomis and just do your own thing, tell your own story, as long as you're tying it into Halloween, Celtic traditions, Samhain, and other things that are associated today with the American celebration of Halloween. I'm all good with that. I think that actually could have been a really wonderful formula. And then you wouldn't notice, or it wouldn't be, even if you did notice, it wouldn't be as negative if you had different filmmakers coming in and putting their own spins on things. You know, Rob Zombie is a very different filmmaker than John Carpenter, and David Gordon Green is a very different filmmaker from Rob Zombie. But in an anthology format, it's okay for a director who's, you know, an auteur to come in and put his own spin on the Halloween thing. I really regret that they strayed away from the format. I mean, when it comes to franchise filmmaking, a lot of what really fucks the whole thing up is the commitment to this overarching narrative. And the commitment really does come from having to reuse these characters for the sake of marketing, for the sake of the fans. I'm going to speak more about that as I wrap up my points, but let's at least consider that, and I'll come back to that in a moment. Now, I very much feel like Halloween 3 is a product of its time. It's a beautiful little time capsule to early 80s, very early 80s, you know, like pre-Madonna, Michael Jackson, you know, not that high 80s pop stuff, but this is what the 80s really felt like wood paneled walls and, you know, cheesy jingles on TV, watching those like wood paneled televisions. I don't know why you got to have wood paneling on your wall and wood paneling on your TV. It was terrible, but I lived through it. I remember what grandma's house looked like. I remember my parents having this giant television. Not only were the TVs like these huge tube things, but they would put them in these giant wooden cabinets as well. That was like a piece of furniture. I mean, the thing was immovable. It was a commitment to a television for sure. But this definitely brings back a lot of nostalgia, as you can see from my tangents. I'm getting off topic now, reminiscing about the 80s, and this film, I think, portrays it very, very well. Those interior shots of Tom Atkins's wife's home, his ex-wife's home, where his kids live and shit, it all felt like perfect. Chef's kiss. It was perfect. 80s mise-en-scène, and it just really brings you back. So I think that people like me, a lot of other YouTubers out there, my homeboy Chase is virtually the same age, he's a touch older than me, but for maybe pop culture, people who grew up in the 80s, I mean, you remember trick-or-treating back then, you remember Halloween culture back then, and the people who do pretty much universally love Halloween 3. I have yet to meet somebody my age, somebody in my kind of generation, that really early millennial or that late Gen Xer and that bracket that doesn't like Halloween 3. We all pretty much love it because it does harken back to something that we remember fondly. We remember fondly that kind of trick-or-treating culture, you know, that being excited about Halloween, like the way these kids are kind of excited about Halloween, excited about that commercial coming on that's going to rot their brain, like turn their whole head into bugs and mush and stuff. It's going to turn their whole head into like applesauce and centipedes or whatever the hell, but they're still excited about it, right? Got to go home and put your mask on at 9 o'clock, and it's just foreboding because you know what's going to happen. By the end of the movie, you know what's going to happen, but then also it's kind of cute, like that childish excitement for this event that we all felt too. You know you did. Plus, you can't go wrong with Tom Atkins boning girls half his age that turn out to be robots or maybe get switched with a robot at some point or something. Who cares? Don't think about it too hard. That's really the one part of the movie that I'm just kind of like, when did she become a robot? It must have been when they captured her, but then what happened to the real one? Did they just kill her off screen? And it's just, obviously they'd have to kill her off screen if you want it to be a surprise for the audience that she turns out to be a robot. But I don't think she was a robot when Tom Atkins was 9 inches deep earlier in the movie, you know? He got deep on his girl, and you go look up his age and go look up her age. I did. I think the actress was like 26, and he was like literally 52, I think, in 1982. That man, he's still with us too. Knock on wood and God bless. Please, Lord, watch over Tom Atkins because that man is a treasure. And so I really just, I think with Halloween 3, the sadness that I take from Halloween 3 is my sadness that they didn't stick with the anthology format. Of course, they went back to Michael Myers with part 4, which I will talk about next. And I think that is, again, that's probably the problem with franchise. One of the big problems with franchise filmmaking is that you try to stray away from the franchise, and what you wind up with is Halloween 3. I think they really swung for the fences on Halloween 3. They really tried to do something that was very different than the previous 2. Which is not to say that it's bad, because Halloween 3 is up there. It's probably one of my top 3 favorite Halloween movies. And yet, because it's so different, it's hard for people to accept it. You know, it's hard for people to accept it when it's brand new. And if it doesn't make money, you know, the filmmakers, the production company, the studio, they don't give a shit if the thing becomes a cult classic in 30 years. They don't give a shit how much people are going to like Halloween 3 in 2025. What they care about is making their money back and then some in 1982. And if it doesn't gross enough money, they're just everybody's gonna get together on November the 1st in a boardroom that morning and just say, we fucked up. We gotta bring Michael Myers back. We gotta do it. We gotta bring Michael Myers back. Now, it wasn't for several years that Halloween 4 got made. It actually was one of those things where Halloween 3 almost killed the franchise. I think they didn't come out with Halloween 4 until '88, so they let quite a few years go by in a period where the slasher was still quite popular. You think about the '80s, you think about those years between 1982 and 1988. I mean, you had Freddy Krueger's coming out, you had Friday the 13th coming out, you got plenty of slashers coming out in that time, and for some reason, Halloween was on hiatus while Jason and Freddy made all the money, but they did finally come back with Halloween 4, and this is another one that I like a lot. It probably doesn't hurt that it came out when I was very young, and so I essentially grew up with Halloween 4 being a thing. I mean, from the time that I was really old enough to watch the Halloween movies, Halloween 4 was in pretty regular rotation on television this time of year. So it's one that I grew up with. It's one that I still accept as a worthy and righteous sequel endeavor to Halloween, the original Halloween, OG Halloween. And with the opening shots, I really love the way it establishes the kind of texture of Haddonfield. It feels like they're returning to small town America again with Halloween Part 4. It very much does feel in these opening shots like it is a return to this original attempt from Halloween 1 and 2 to portray the horrors that kind of lurk underneath this small town Americana. It doesn't quite feel like the same town as the original when we see the shots of Haddonfield throughout the film. Of course, they don't reuse any of the same locations, so it feels a little bit like a different town, but at the same time, it had been about 10 years since the original Halloween. So it made sense that there would be some changes to the town, that maybe some things got built up, some things got taken down, etc. I'm okay, but what I really like is the establishing shots, the texture of Haddonfield. Halloween 4 actually feels to me more like a made-for-TV movie kind of feel. It has a little bit more of that like pan and scan type of camera movement. It's like a VHS type of cinematography to it. And it could be because it was made in the late 80s when like the VHS, it was booming right at that time. So I also like just the way the town feels. It feels very lived in. It feels like a real place. It doesn't feel like a backlot. I mean, it really feels like it's got like this real kind of layering and texture to it. Like it had been built up over time. The house was built, 10 years go by, there's junk in the backyard, there's a car in the driveway. It all feels like a real town in that sense, that there's different components that are kind of folded together. I really, really like it, but I do hate the mask. It's terrible. The Michael Myers mask in Halloween Part 4 is quite possibly the worst mask of the entire series. It's terrible. It's an awful, awful mask. And it doesn't make a lot of sense that he would steal the same mask. I mean, from the info we've got, Part 1, Part 2, he really just stole a mask at random. It wasn't that one particular white mask had any significance for Michael Myers. I think it had more of a significance for the filmmakers and for us as the audience because it presents this pale kind of white, almost skeletal, like he looks a little bit like a Grim Reaper in that he's got this very like white, almost lifelike but dead kind of corpse-like visage. And so they need to replicate the mask in Halloween 4. This is again getting back to the problem of franchise filmmaking. They need the thing, the shape, to look like the shape from the first one. So he's got to get a mask. He can't get the mask from the first one. It's gone. It got burnt up in the fire in Part 2 or whatever. So he's got to steal a mask. But it just so happens that he's in a store and he can steal a mask that looks nearly identical but a slightly retarded copy of the first one. That's the part that I get a little hung up on. I mean, it seems like Michael Myers would just take whatever was there and shoehorning that mask in. How it's like sort of the same, but a little bit different from the first one, just seems a little bit ridiculous. I like Jamie Lloyd as the target. She's like this little orphan girl. That angle pulls on my heartstrings a little bit, being a father, having daughters. You know, so this movie legit, last time I watched it was about a week ago. It made me want to like literally foster and adopt kids. I was like, man, like poor kids out here that lose their mothers in car accidents after their mothers narrowly survived being killed by a madman. And, you know, like these poor girls with all these traumas and these poor kids, you know, like you just want to give Jamie Lloyd a hug, man, that poor little girl. And so it works, I think, in a slightly different way than him chasing around a teenager. You know, that the idea of Michael Myers chasing around teens and that are having sex and stuff, it seems more puritanical. It's, you know, he's punishing them for the premarital sex or something like that. He's punishing them for their sexuality. And, you know, in this film, it's more about him going after his family, I think. And so it's good. It's a little ridiculous that somehow Michael Myers survived the explosion at the end of part 2. And they don't even mention his eyes being shot out. Like, you remember he's got the blood coming down the mask. Both eyes got shot out, and he's like swinging wildly trying to cut Laurie Strode with the scalpel, and then she's got to run out of there real quick, and then the whole place blows up, and somehow Loomis and Michael are alive, and Michael's got his eyes back. It's very ridiculous, but they don't even mention it. They're just like, don't even talk about it, just keep going. He's back. We brought him back after part 3, motherfuckers. Now shut your little mouths and go watch the movie where Michael Myers is back. He's gonna kill some more teenagers. Even more ridiculous is how fucking full of lead those cops pump him at the end of that movie, and like he's all good for part 5. I was trying to count. I think the sheriff whose daughter Michael Myers impaled with the shotgun, I think he shot Michael Myers with a shotgun from pretty close range. I want to say he popped off, I think 4 or 5 rounds in that shotgun. I'm assuming those are going to hit. You don't really miss with a shotgun at that particular range. I'm not sure if you've ever shot anything at 20 yards or 10 yards with a shotgun, but you don't miss. You don't even really have to aim, and it does tend to blow soft objects into like 2 large pieces. The idea of Michael Myers still kind of having his legs attached, still having like an attached abdomen at his midsection is kind of laughable at the end, because, you know, they're not just like pew pew with 22s and missing half the shots. I mean, they're spraying him with shotgun blasts, which, you know, 3 or 4 of those and he really would be in 2 pieces. So it's a little bit ridiculous, but whatever. That's kind of what we're here for. I'm forgiving of things that are ridiculous in these like high 80s type of horror films where, you know, you're bringing this guy back to make more money. They're not really very abashed or shameful about it. They're bringing him back to make more money because part 3 didn't make enough money and the Akkad family got to eat. I think the worst part of Halloween 4 ultimately is the half-assed attempt that they make to pass the evil on from Michael Myers into Jamie Lloyd with that twist ending, which I think the twist ending is great. I think the bad part about it is that they didn't follow up on it. They had to go crawling back to Michael Myers after considering part 3 a bust. So why would they transition away from Michael Myers in that very same movie, right? The logic is that we can't sell a Halloween movie without Michael Myers. That's what we learned from Halloween part 3, being a bit of a letdown commercially. When we come back to Halloween 4, we got Michael Myers back. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to write a movie where he gets blown to absolute smithereens. He's reduced to a shape-flavored applesauce, and they pass the evil on to Jamie Lloyd, only, you know, when Halloween 5 comes out and there's no Michael Myers, people go be rip shit. So I really think that if you are going to take away from Halloween 3 that anything that doesn't have Michael Myers in it is a bust, then any attempt to then transition the main villain away from Michael Myers into another character, I think is also, it's misspent effort. You're going to get us invested in this transition to this new character only to come back and say, nope, a homeless guy found Michael Myers, nursed him back to health. He killed the homeless guy for his effort, and he's back. You know, after being blasted 18 times by 5 different shotguns, he's back, guys. They have to reuse Michael Myers. But also the Michael Myers storyline does get kind of stupid after part 4. It gets a little ridiculous with the cult shit and him surviving the 50 gunshot wounds and explosions and shit, getting his eyes shot out and then his eyes are just back. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's really ridiculous about the Halloween franchise going forward, but it all is connected to their commitment to Michael Myers. You can blow Michael Myers into smithereens if Jamie Lloyd is going to be the killer in part 5. There's no problem. But if you can't get off of Michael Myers to allow that to transition away, then, you know, you've just got this really ridiculous, we're going to shoot him up and he's dead at the end, but he's not. He's going to come back. And they did it with Freddy, and they did it with Jason. So I'm not saying that they're uniquely culpable for something that no one else in the annals of film history ever tried, but it is the problem, I think, with having this franchise built around this character versus doing it anthology style. So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. You either have something that's getting bland and stale and ridiculous, or you have this thing that doesn't resemble the original after a little while. Of course, he impales the blonde girl with the really huge boobies with the shotgun. And I hate that kill because I don't understand how you could possibly do that. I don't think a human being could produce enough force to put a shotgun through a human body. I think the person would just fall over. I don't think you're going to put that shotgun through the person and through the wall. I'm a bit incredulous with that. I mean, he did put his thumb through a forehead. I don't know if you've ever considered the durability of the human skull, but it's a particular of anatomy that your brain is behind your skull, and therefore you want your skull to be a fairly durable bone, and therefore taking a very blunt instrument like your thumb with a relatively little musculature to drive it, right? The thumb has been designed by evolution to like grip things. So, it's got enough strength that I can hold something. I might even be able to squeeze something really hard and crush it, but I'm not putting my thumb through a skull, right? The skull has been designed better than that to be like not really crushable with the human hand. You've got to get something like a rock and use the mass of the rock to crush a human skull. So there are a few ridiculous kills, which again, I'm forgiving because I hate the shotgun kill, but I also love the shotgun kill, which makes me hate it. But then I also love how stupid it is. It's impossibly ridiculous, and I kind of love like high 80s impossibly ridiculous shit is beautiful to me. So I like Halloween 4 a lot, but I also draw a line at Halloween 4. Like the stuff that comes after Halloween 4 is really not very good. Halloween 4 is sort of where the franchise went wrong. The first 4 Halloweens I love for the various different things. There's different things that I love about them, but I think after Halloween 4, it's more miss than hit. Really, I'm going to go out there and say that. I'll come out of that closet too. I think everything after Halloween 4 is more miss than hit. You do still have some good stuff, but it's not as good as the shit because there's some really awful shit coming. Halloween 5, of course, I do feel like is a little bit repetitive from Halloween 4. I think it's a little bit of a rehash. They're sort of going with the same. Michael Myers is the bad guy. Somehow he survived. He's after Jamie Lloyd again. It's only been a year, so she's still kind of tiny and pathetic and cute. After following such a bold ending as number 4 gave us, they really just kind of, hand wave it away. Oh, she attacked her mom, but her mom's okay, or foster mom's okay, and now she's receiving psychiatric care, but she's still a normal little girl. She's not a mute psychopath like she presented at the end of part 4. And so that's kind of the problem again with franchise filmmaking is that they need to give us more Michael Myers because they're worried we won't buy anything else. But at the same time, there's diminishing returns with that too, because I'm the consumer. If I want more Michael Myers, I've got Halloween 1, 2, and 4. Why do I need Halloween 5? Why can't I just bust out my VHS of 1, 2, or 4? I don't really need a part 5, and that's why you see some of these box office returns on these films going down as well. So it really, to me, kind of defeats the logic of, well, Halloween 3 didn't work because there was no Michael Myers. I think that's a conclusion that you can draw from Halloween 3, but it's spurious, and I think that particular hypothesis has been disproven by sequels like Halloween 5 and Halloween 6 and Halloween Resurrection. You have sequels that do contain Michael Myers that still underperform the previous entry in the series, and it's not because they don't contain Michael Myers, because they do contain Michael Myers. It's because people get fatigued by the inevitable outcomes of franchise filmmaking. Is the inevitable outcome is that people are going to get fatigued by it. And people are going to say, I got part 1 and part 2 and part 4. Part 5 is not as good, and I don't want to go see it, and I don't want to buy the VHS, and I can watch the good ones. Why do I need to go see this shitty, inferior sequel after sequel after sequel? People do get a little tired of it, and the sequels do tend to bring in less money than the previous film once they go on. And so Part 5 also introduces the whole cult of Thorn thing at the end. This is kind of where they dip their toe into the paranormal shit. I think in Part 5, there's still not a lot of paranormal stuff. I don't really think they knew where they were going with the ending when that guy in black comes and and busts Michael Myers out. I don't know how he gets Michael Myers out of there, because I don't see Michael Myers going willingly with this man in black. I don't know if he darts him or what. The whole thing's silly to think about. I don't want to think about the smoking. It reminds me of the smoking man from X-Files. He's just going to throw Jamie Lloyd and a 6.5 foot tall Michael Myers over his shoulder and walk out of the police station. It's really silly. I wish they'd fuck off with that shit. I really dislike how they did Rachel from Part 4, man. I mean, she was the GOAT foster sister of all time in Part 4. She busted her ass to keep that little ass Jamie Lloyd alive. And what does she get for her efforts? She gets whacked out, killed off by Michael Myers like it was nothing. Anyway, Halloween 5 is pretty stupid, but not as stupid as Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers. This is the one where they dropped the numbering, and I don't like that because it does get confusing without the numbers. If you think about a fan in 2025 who's going back and maybe they're a little bit of a younger person, think about somebody who's maybe in their mid-20s right now, they're 24, 25, and they want to, they're not revisiting the Halloween films, but they're actually watching them for the first time, and they're wanting to experience this because they hear people like me and other folks online, Chase, CHH, other people who talk about the Halloweens lovingly, talk about you need to see these. So you're going to go back and watch all the Halloween movies. It's great. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They all got numbers. I know how to sequentially watch these things. But then they start dropping Curse of Michael Myers, Resurrection, H2O. It's like, well, what order do these go in? There's nothing about Resurrection that says it comes before or after Curse of Michael Myers. You just have to get on the internet and look it up and write down the list and then know what order they go in. I am not an organized person at all, really. I don't consider myself very organized at all, but even I can number some shit, and it would be much better if they had just kept with the numbers, I think, in this one, at least. Now, I do think that Part 6 is worthwhile. I mean, you should check it out for the kills, at least, like the electrocution scene. This one, I think, is notorious for having a couple of very different cuts of the film. So yeah, there's deleted scenes from some of the earlier Halloween films that you can watch on their Blu-rays and shit. But Part 6, The Curse of Michael Myers, is really where you get two kind of wildly different cuts. Maybe not wildly, but two very different cuts, and you get a little bit more gore in, I think it's the producer's cut, I think has a little bit more of that nastiness and stuff like that in it. So over the years, this one has built up a little bit of a reputation for having maybe a little bit more of a secret cut that is more widely available nowadays. But in the late 90s, it was just kind of hey, did you hear about this? There's this other version. It shows the guy's head explode because he gets electrocuted until he shits himself, whatever. Anyway, some of the kills are kind of fun. Otherwise, the movie kind of sucks. It really gets bogged down by the whole Curse of Thorn, all of that lore that they really just kind of invented for this movie based on the final scene of the last movie. It's really pretty stupid. I don't care much for Paul Rudd in this one. Paul Rudd is a human being that I like very much. I've never met him, but I imagine he's a pretty lovely human being. I think he's developed a pretty good reputation for himself. I think he seems like he's probably a good person. Who knows? Maybe he stomps puppies in secret, but I think that most of the world likes Paul Rudd, and I consider myself most of the world, but I don't like him in this one. It feels really kind of gross seeing Paul Rudd in a Halloween movie after knowing where his career would go after this, what he would be doing in this century, the 21st century, kind of what his strengths as an entertainer are, seeing him in funny films like Anchorman and 40-Year-Old Virgin and stuff like that, knowing what, really, at least his persona is very affable, seeing him on Conan O'Brien show and stuff, and how he always pranks Conan and stuff like that with the trailer. But I, knowing how affable Paul Rudd really is, seeing him in this movie is just it's weird. It's weird. It's if Kim Kardashian was your mom and you found a video of her getting railed by a dude who's not your dad, it's this is weird. Pictures of your mom from when she was dating some other dude at prom and stuff. You're I know you're 17 and you didn't meet my dad until you were 25, but it's still kind of weird and gross to see you with this scraggly looking senior at your senior prom. I don't know who this guy is. Get him out of here. It's yucky. That's the feeling I feel. Paul Rudd feels like a gross, yucky stepdad or something like that. Why are you bringing this guy home? He's gross, he's yucky, get him out of here. I don't like him in this movie. I also don't like that they recast Jamie Lloyd. They killed her off after she had a baby with her uncle. That feels gross to even say. I hate the movie for making that sentence possible. I don't like the idea of Michael Myers doing sex stuff. I don't think I'm in the minority. I don't like the idea of him doing sex stuff, especially to his niece. Like, Michael Myers doing sex stuff is gross. Him doing sex stuff, incest, with his own family is disgusting. It is repugnant. It is repulsive. I don't think I'm being particularly controversial here when I say incest is yucky, okay? I don't mind watching a guy get electrocuted to death and then exploding. I have a little bit of an issue with a guy impregnating his own niece. Bringing back Tommy Doyle was kind of ham-fisted as well. Did I mention that? But also, does Michael Myers leave the mask on during the sex? Does he grunt and moan? I've already heard him breathe very deeply, very like in the first one. It already sounds like he's like yanking off, right? He's like in the first one, and doing like the Darth Vader thing in the first one, almost like he's a little bit aroused and excited. I've already got that visualization. Don't bring it to him impregnating his own niece. Now, Michael Myers has been institutionalized since he was like 8, so he's a virgin, right? So his first time was with his own niece? Just the fact that I'm even saying this kind of fucked up shit makes me hate this movie for putting it out into the world. Somebody sat down at a typewriter or some early 90s laptop, some thick-ass IBM laptop, and just started typing this out. Yeah, so Michael Myers is railing his niece. Yeah, it's his niece he tried to kill the last 2 times, but now for some reason, he's stabbing her with something else below the belt. He never felt this feeling before because he'd been locked up since he was a little kid, and now he's getting to stab with something else below his waist, and then she's gonna have a baby, and then he's gonna kill her with some kind of farm equipment. It's disgusting. Incest baby. They spend a whole movie trying to protect the incest baby. Fuck, it's just so fucked up on so many levels. I have so much, honestly, I'm getting mad at this movie now, and this isn't even the one that I'm the most upset about. Jamie Lloyd would have been born around, like, what, 1980? The first movie happens in 78. Laurie wasn't pregnant yet, so, you know, she gets pregnant in a year, 2 years, or whatever. Jamie Lloyd would have been born around 80, maybe 81. That makes her roughly 15 years old when she was impregnated by her uncle. I got nothing more to say about this movie. It's disgusting, but not in the right ways, not in the ways we want it to be disgusting. Can we get back to making horror movies sexy again? I want to see people in the shower. I want to see them having sex. I want to see them get stabbed or run over or shot or whatever. I want to see Michael follow him around. I want to see him peeking through the wall so that we can see through his point of view while they're doing the humping thing and he's going to town and Michael's all like... And then he comes out and he does a stabby dressed up like a ghost. Is that asking too much? There's no incest in what I've just described at all. There was a reason why there was no incest in these movies. Fuck me. Anyway, here comes Halloween H2O. And if you guys have watched my previous video from like a week ago or so, then you already know I find Halloween H2O overrated. That's not to say that I hate the film. I don't hate Halloween H2O. I watched it, I think, twice last year. I appreciate, for one thing, that they scrubbed the record entirely of the incest baby from a few years earlier. They're completely done with the incest baby. They woke up, they sobered up, they dusted the cocaine off of their nose, they started drinking herbal teas and shit like that. They got off the alcohol and they realized that the incest baby was maybe not the best idea in the world. And so they went back to not fucking your own family in Halloween H2O, and I gotta say I appreciate that. I think Halloween H2O is maybe a little bit too 90s. It's trying too hard in this like post-Scream world of horror cinema. It just feels too Miramax for me. This one feels like Harvey Weinstein is the one doing the breathing and the like that. It's Harvey Weinstein. I don't like The Mask. It's better than Part 4. I don't like The Mask, but it is better than Part 4. I don't like that you can see his eyes. It's not a major complaint, but it is worthy of mentioning in a laundry list of other complaints about this movie. I don't like Josh Hartnett in this film. I don't know if I like Josh Hartnett. He's no Paul Rudd, let's put it that way. He's no Paul Rudd. I'm sure he's a nice guy too. I've never met him. I'm sure he's a nice guy too, but he's no Paul Rudd. I absolutely hate, one thing that I hate the most, probably the most reviled thing about H2O is that they released it in early August. August the 5th, Do you know what August the 5th is, everybody? I'll give you a second. It's fucking summertime. It's not the fucking fall. Halloween is a fall movie. It is a fall franchise. You don't fucking leave a pool party to go see a Halloween movie. That's not how it's supposed to be done. This is America, for Christ's sake. I don't want to watch a Halloween movie right after my daughter's pool party for her birthday on August the 8th. There's no reason to be releasing a Halloween film outside of September or October. You got those 2 months. That's your window. It's an 8-week window. It's a 61-day window. I'm giving you 61 days out of every year to release a Halloween movie. Anything outside of that is unreasonable. Don't you dare release a Halloween movie on November the 1st. I will fuck you up. August the 5th. That was some Miramax-ass shit. That was somebody saying, well, you know, the teenagers are still out on their summer break, and so we can maximize our revenue by releasing a Halloween film in fucking August. How are you going to release a Halloween film closer to fucking Independence Day than actual goddamn Halloween? You going to release it a month after fucking Independence Day, after July 4th. Fucking assholes in my neighborhood are still out there shooting fireworks out and shit. It's fucking daylight till 9:30 at night. Not one of them fucking leaves has even thought about falling off a fucking tree. And you're gonna release Halloween to me. And you're gonna tell me I should go watch a movie that's all about Halloween. It's summertime, goddammit. I'm going to the beach. I'm not going to see Halloween. Come at me in a month. Come talk to me after Labor Day. There's no reason that you should ever fucking release a Halloween movie before Labor Day in the year. There's no reason for that. It's disguised. It's worse than the Incest Baby. You thought I was upset about the Incest Baby? I'm upset about the August 5th release date of any kind of Halloween movie. It's obscene. It's disgusting and it's obscene. And you should be ashamed of yourself, Harvey Weinstein. Touching them girls and releasing movies at the wrong time. It's inappropriate. Anyway, I like LL Cool J in general, but not here. Not in Halloween. He adds too much levity. Like, LL Cool J is great. I love LL Cool J. But he's actually kind of funny in this movie. Like, he's a silly character, which is also why he lives. Like, it would feel too shitty killing off the silly character. But that's also why I say Halloween feels more like this sort of tongue-in-cheek meta, H2O, that is, feels like this tongue-in-cheek kind of meta, Scream-influenced Halloween. It's not the OG Halloween. How much humor and comedy is in the original Halloween? It's nothing but dread. There's no humorous, hey, let's bring out the funny security guard who's actually secretly a novelist, and he's always talking to his wife on the phone and trying to woo her and shit like that, and he's always saying, oh, baby, and shit like that on the phone because it makes us laugh. There's none of that in the original Halloween. There's none of that in Halloween 2. There's the feeling of dread and the feeling of foreboding, and we're going to write this funny character in he's really hilarious. He's not going to get killed because he's really just too funny to stab him in the throat and watch him bleed out. It does not belong here. It's out of place in the Halloween franchise. Take that to the Scream franchise. That's where it belongs. It belongs in a more meta, kind of comedic, tongue-in-cheek sort of franchise. Halloween is not meant to be, I think, that self-aware and that balanced. I hate that the movie's setting is California. I think it's California. You totally lose the like small town, suburban Americana that really felt very familiar to people, I think. Like Haddonfield was just a great stand-in for like middle America. And if you grew up in like a small to middle-sized town, you recognized Haddonfield, right? Like it wasn't a big city like Atlanta or Boston or New York, but it was still very recognizable to even to people like me who grew up in Metro Atlanta. Like the neighborhood looked kind of similar to my neighborhood. It looks even more like my neighborhood here in New England. But I just really don't like that they moved the setting because it kills the fall and autumn vibe for me. And it does, I think, make it a little bit less identifiable. It's harder to see this like, you know, you look out and I go for a walk. I like to go for a walk in the afternoons and I'll do some walks. And, you know, this time of year, the leaves are beautiful and they're all over the ground. And I'm just like, I could turn a corner and there would be like Michael Myers standing kind of near the tree with the fall and the leaves and stuff. And it looks like that. It looks like Haddonfield near where I live. I should throw some pictures up for you guys so you kind of see like, this is what like my neighborhood looks like. And it doesn't look like fucking Arizona. There's no leaves. Like it's supposed to be fall leaves, not a fall cactus. Get the shit out of here with the cactus. Get out of here with the arid Southern California. You know what I mean? It looks more like Mexico than Chicago or Illinois. I really don't like the idea of Michael Myers driving cross country. I've talked about this in another video, so I'm not going to repeat that particular rant for the sake of my blood pressure, but I'm going to burst a blood vessel in his eye. And it's like 2,000 miles. The idea of him taking this road trip for 3 days in the car, it's just ridiculous to think about. I'm guessing he pulls over at like a rest stop at night to rest for a couple of hours, maybe under the cover of dark, or maybe he sleeps during the day, kind of pulled off in some abandoned shopping center by the dumpster or something, and maybe drives at night, and that's why he's not caught on his drive from Illinois to Southern California. But it is ridiculous to think about, like, he's getting hungry, he's gonna need to eat. Does he does he go dumpster diving? I mean, the most realistic thing would be that he probably drove at night under the cover of darkness when there were fewer cars and fewer cops and stuff like that on the road. And during the daytime, he would just find this secluded place to kind of pull off well away from other people driving by and parking and looking in and seeing him wearing the stupid mask. And I'm guessing he doesn't go through the drive-thru. He probably stole food, or he'd go through the dumpster or whatever. He'd pull up behind the Dunkin' and look for the day-old donuts and just eat those, I guess, so that he doesn't get caught driving a car he stole from a lady he killed 2 days earlier. Anyway, again, I'm trying not to go back into that rant because I've already done that one, and you guys have already seen that video, I hope. So it's one of those films that really kind of highlights the fact that if we're to believe that Michael Myers is a human being, then he does all of these mundane human things that we do. We're humans, we're normal. Like, we pee and we poop and we eat and we fart and we, scratch our armpits and pick our noses, and we do all that stuff because we're normal human beings. But we're not like these slasher cinema icons like Michael Myers. Like, you don't want to see Michael Myers scratching his ass. You don't want to see Michael Myers stopping to take a piss. It's just having to think about that because he's taking this 3-day car ride. It sort of undercuts the horror of this person just kind of showing up. I know he took a car ride in the first one too, but it's a much shorter, a 45-minute drive is not the same as 3 straight days, 32 hours in a car or something like that. So it isn't the same. And thinking about him doing all this mundane shit like eating a Big Mac while farting in the car and listening to morning radio is just the silliest. Like, he's listening to Coast with Art Bell while eating a McDouble from an all-night McDonald's is just so silly to me. And it is what you have to think about, though, when you're wondering how Michael Myers gets from point A to point B in H2O. I think it's really the road trip that kind of loses me finally on this one. But we have to talk about Halloween Resurrection, everybody. Woo! As far as I'm concerned, this is the series' lowest point. This is the worst. This is the lowest. This is the most terrible Halloween has ever been and likely will ever be. Mercifully, this is as bad as it's going to get. Halloween Resurrection has a 10% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I think even that is too generous. It shouldn't be 10. It should be 0%. Busta Rhymes does kung fu on Michael Myers, and he says, "Trick or treat, motherfucker," to him. It's really terrible. I like the idea of Busta Rhymes saying "trick or treat, motherfucker," but in my video, yes, not in a Halloween movie to Michael Myers' face. So there's a problem, I think, with the slasher genre in general. I'm just talking about the subgenre of slasher films. And it's a problem that's not present in other subgenres of horror films, like creature movies or monster movies. You don't get this in a werewolf film. You don't get this in a vampire movie. You do get this very much. This problem is inherent to the slasher subgenre. And it is that they're defeatable. Several minutes ago, I had mentioned looking out your front door and seeing Michael Myers with kind of half on your yard, kind of creeping and looking out at somebody around your hedges. And you're just thinking, dude, get the F off my lawn. What are you doing? Get out of here. Get the fuck, what are you standing on my yard for? I just mowed the grass over there. You know what I mean? I just put fertilizer on this yard. You're just standing there. Anyway, you're not intimidated. I'm not intimidated. I'm the homeowner. I see 23-year-old, lanky-ass 23-year-old standing on my lawn, and I'm not intimidated by him. That is to say that, to the right kind of guy, a slasher is not an especially scary individual. Rob Zombie, I think, addressed this problem with slashers by making Michael Myers a Goliath, essentially. The issue with a human slasher that's not paranormal, I mean, I know Freddy Krueger kind of gets around this problem as well by making him paranormal, but the problem with a human slasher like Michael Myers is that they are defeatable. And in the original Halloween, think about the original Halloween, go back and watch it if you have to. Michael Myers is not especially notable physically. He's not like a physical specimen. He's young enough so that he's got that working for him, that he's 23, the character is 23, but he's not a trained athlete, right? He's not muscled, he's not tall, he's not especially tall, he's 6-ish feet. He's a little bit taller than Jamie Lee Curtis, I believe, but he's not the Goliath that he's made into in the Rob Zombie remake. He is just kind of a normal dude. You get the idea that if he faced against someone who was trained, think about all the MMA gyms that exist nowadays. I mean, back then it was probably more like karate and other martial arts, more traditional martial arts, but jujitsu. It's not like motherfuckers weren't training in jujitsu in 1999 or 2000 or 2002 when this movie came out. And you think about that, Michael Myers doesn't stand a chance against somebody who's trained or ex-military or something like that. John Carpenter in the original Halloween compensated for this by having Michael Myers stalk a bunch of 110-pound, 16-year-old girls. And even then, he doesn't even really have any direct physical confrontations with any of these people. He took everybody by surprise, and he used psychological assault with Laurie Strode when he placed all of these things for her to see and to horrify her and to maybe shock her into a point where she couldn't think rationally and she couldn't properly respond in a fight or flight manner. So, I mean, I think in the original Halloween, it's probably okay that Michael Myers is not this big, burly, physical dude, because in the context of that narrative, he's able to accomplish what he's able to accomplish. But the problem with the ensuing films, making this thing a franchise, is that over the course of the ensuing films, Michael Myers has to essentially avoid direct toe-to-toe confrontations with people who might be trained in martial arts or former Marines or some shit like that. He's not able to get into these direct confrontations with people who might be able to outmatch him toe-to-toe. He has to continue to stalk people who are physically weaker than him or use surprise to catch somebody unaware instead of letting them put up their dukes and kind of go toe-to-toe with them. In the early films in the Halloween franchise, I'm thinking, Halloween 1 through 5, Haddonfield feels like a really small kind of middle America town, and it seems natural that Michael Myers doesn't run into like trained MMA fighters or like retired special forces dudes like the ex-Navy SEAL who lives across the street. Like it doesn't seem like that kind of place. It seems natural that Haddonfield would be populated by accountants and bankers and people that aren't really like, we don't fight. It's Haddonfield. Like I've never had to kill a man with my bare hands on the beaches of Normandy or something. The idea is that Haddonfield is this kind of maybe a softer target for Michael Myers as well. But of course, also we follow Michael Myers as he stalks easy prey. I mean, in large part, Michael Myers himself is selecting our population sample of Haddonfield. So Michael Myers goes after the school, high schoolers. So naturally, we see a bunch of high schoolers and their middle-aged parents. He's not stalking people who are like leaving the MMA gym thinking, I'm going to take this guy who's trained in Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu. To some degree, we see what we see because that's who Michael Myers is following. But, by 2002, when Halloween Resurrections was released, we're just coming off the crest of a high and beautiful wave of kung fu films in Hollywood. By 2002, my grandma knew who Jackie Chan and Jet Li were. My grandma. So you've penetrated pop culture zeitgeist when my grandma knew who you were. She knew Jet Li, she knew Jackie Chan, maybe because I was fans of those individuals as well. But, films like Rush Hour 2, The One, Romeo Must Die, Shanghai Noon, all of these films were hits. They were really popular in that day. And, watching an old school slasher where some schlub with a knife dices people up with no real physical opposition, at least until the very end, they might bump into somebody who fights back a little at the end, but that sort of thing seems quaint on a good day and maybe pretty ridiculous and stupid on a bad day. So by 2002, it makes some sense that Busta Rhymes would be able to rock Michael's shit. Busta represents what was popular in the zeitgeist of '02. Well, Michael Myers is this nostalgic throwback to the 70s and 80s. I mean, even in 2002, it's like, oh yeah, those old movies. I grew up watching those. In 2002, I'm 21. I'm young, I'm cool, and I'm like, this is the old slasher dude from, like right around the time I was born, and maybe even a little earlier. He's an old dude by then. Busta Rhymes was like 30 in 2002. Michael Myers would have been pushing 50 as a character. So, if we limit Michael to a purely human physiology, he's got the capabilities of a pure human, nothing supernatural about him, then, I mean, of course, he's a malnourished 50-year-old hobo fighting a healthy 30-year-old dude. He's gonna get his ass kicked. So it makes sense, but it's absolutely a slap in the face to fans of the Halloween franchise. Like, what the fuck did they do to our boy Michael? We're a fan of this franchise, and watching him get his ass whooped by fucking Busta Rhymes was a bit of, like, it took everything good out of the franchise. It just took the legs out of the franchise. Everything horrifying about this guy, every bit of dread about this guy, and it just sucked it all out. It was all gone. And it was a bum fighting a 30-year-old. It was terrible. It's one thing for us as the fans to sit at home watching an old slasher movie and thinking like, I fucked that little Norman Bates dude up, because I would. I'd knock Anthony Perkins' teeth out in one shot. But it's another thing to actually make it the conclusion of an actual fucking Halloween movie. That was terrible. So Halloween Resurrection in its final scene essentially destroys the IP. I mean, looking back, I'm actually a little surprised that they were able to recover the Halloween IP. I was ready for the franchise to be over after this shit. And this is really the film in which Halloween became self-parody. It actually became self-parody with this film. I think the webcam thing is kind of interesting. It does seem to predict some later trends in entertainment. I mean, in 2002, they seemed to predict how much of our entertainment would be internet-based. 20 years later, 25 years later, they really did seem to nail that. Like, I'm a dude who's recording something on a camera. It's all something that can be done at a consumer level, and I'm uploading it to the internet for other people's enjoyment. Hopefully you're enjoying this a little bit. The idea that somebody could have figured that out and put that into a movie 20 plus years ago is actually kind of prescient of them to have foreseen the conditions of kind of modern entertainment and reality. Kind of reality TV meets the internet capability, and what do you have? You have YouTube, you have people creating their own shows. And so I do kind of give Resurrection a little bit of credit for that. That being said, it was way too early for people to be effectively streaming this shit live like that. And I'm actually kind of surprised that I have had so much to say about Halloween Resurrection. But in fucking up Michael Myers so badly, they actually provide us with a stark contrast to the better entries in the series. So it actually gives us a lot of interesting, like, there's a lot of meat on that bone, even though it's all rancid and terrible. This is the only Halloween movie that I will turn off when it comes on. I always say bad is forgivable, right? If you took a chance and you made a bad movie, bad movies can be fun too. But this is not just bad, it's insulting. Halloween Resurrection is a great big fuck you to all Halloween fans, and that's what I think. They had to come back a few years later with a Halloween remake by Rob Zombie. I mean, they had to distance themselves so far from Resurrection. They couldn't pick up where that one ended. And essentially, that's the end of one of the timelines. It's like Busta Rhymes whips his ass in a burning building, and I don't know, he burns up alive, or they take him out of there and he lives. But we never revisit that particular Michael Myers in the Michael Myers universe. They're doing a Jason universe, but they really need to do a Michael Myers universe, because Jason still kind of sort of has one timeline, mostly. Halloween, there's like 5 different Halloween timelines. So they need to do a Michael Myers universe is what they need to do. But anyway, the problem I have with Halloween, with Rob Zombie's Halloween remake, is really there's just too much explanation of Michael Myers' backstory here. There's a saying that familiarity breeds contempt. And what that means is that knowing too much about Michael Myers' backstory resolves all that ambiguity around why he was who he was, how he became who he was in that original Halloween film. And it worked well, I think, for the original Halloween, that he was a silent and inexplicable killer. The mystery around his life and motivation were key elements to his character. It's why he worked as the Shape, as the boogeyman. He's not just Michael Myers in that first film, right? He's the Shape. He's the boogeyman. He's something that's larger than just a single person. He represents something that's bigger than just Michael Myers. And that, I think, is lost here in the Rob Zombie remake. Unsurprisingly, Rob Zombie made him white trash and explained that his condition is a response to abuse and loss and essentially PTSD. Undoubtedly, that this type of experience and abuse leads to behavioral health issues, including homicidal ideation. And it's not that the backstory of Michael Myers is implausible. It makes perfect sense, but if anything, maybe it's not fantastic enough. It's too grounded. It's too informed by actual psychiatry. And so, you lose that mysterious quality about Michael Myers. It's lacking. He has this sympathetic backstory. You feel bad for young Michael Myers, so he's more identifiable as a human. Any of us who have ever had like bad times, rough times, being bullied or something like that, you look back at maybe what Michael Myers is experiencing is way worse, but you look at Michael Myers and you think like, okay, I can identify with that. I feel bad for this young man because I got bullied or whatever. I got made fun of or something happened to me. My family wasn't perfect. I had an alcoholic, whatever, and he used to kick the shit out of me. Anyway, you can identify now with Michael Myers, and I think that's bad. I don't think we want that out of a Halloween. In hindsight, I don't think we want that out of a Halloween film. He's not this mysterious force of destruction anymore. He's just a psychotic mongoloid who happens to like masks because they help him dissociate. In the original Halloween, Michael Myers has a connection to the season and to the holiday of Halloween, and it seems almost spiritual in that very first Halloween film. He's like this personification of the fall season. Leaves die off, they fall off the trees. The days grow shorter and cooler. The sun is actually going away. People used to believe that the sun was going away. They wondered if it was going to keep going away and never coming back. There's this culling of the harvest that's been going on in agricultural societies for the last 10,000 years. The death that Michael brings at Halloween is a metaphor for this cycle of nature. It's very appropriate that Michael Myers is connected with Halloween because of its position in the fall, in autumn, because of the Celtic traditions of Samhain and how it's connected to this particular time of year as a metaphor for that. But in Rob Zombie's remake, all of that is jettisoned in favor of this very realistic, very grounded explanation of Michael's psychosis. Instead of this natural, spiritual significance to the character, in Rob Zombie's film, Halloween just means mask time. That's really what it is. Halloween is a time to dress up. And so he likes wearing masks, so therefore Halloween is his favorite holiday because he gets to put a mask on. But it meant more than that in the original Halloween. And Michael Myers' connection to Halloween meant more than just put on a mask and go stabby stabby. He was actually a metaphor for the change that occurs from summer into fall or into winter, that fall period of time when things would die off and be culled and actually cut down. I mean, that's why he did this. The murder of the people that he did was part of that culling metaphor. And so I don't think it's actually very much different than the prequel trilogy. It was one thing to imagine a backstory for Darth Vader based on what little we knew about him from the original trilogy, but there was just something so phenomenally underwhelming about actually seeing Anakin Skywalker as a petulant, entitled teenager, born good at everything. He never had to struggle, never had to work, never had to train. We don't see him break a sweat, and he's just this petulant little punk. And I feel that way about Michael Myers a little bit here too. Just seeing the backstory was underwhelming compared to imagining what it could have been like. There's something kind of primal and eternal about Michael Myers' evil when it's unexplained. But here in Rob Zombie's remake, he's just this giant abused redneck who fortunately grew to be 7 feet tall and 300 pounds. And therefore he gets to break out and kill people on Halloween. It's not as good, I don't think. Rob Zombie also made a sequel, Halloween 2. And this one has Michael Myers talking even more as Michael Myers this time. And that's like big oof, you know? It was one thing to hear his character talk as a kid before he was traumatized and institutionalized, but him talking again afterward, telling Loomis to die, it's just too much for me. This shit doesn't feel like a Halloween movie at all. This feels like a Rob Zombie effort, but it feels too far away. This is what I was talking about with franchise filmmaking, is you're gonna have entries that feel so wildly different that it just doesn't even feel like the same thing anymore. We go to Halloween for a certain thing, and if you're served something different, even if it's okay, it's not gonna be very good because you were expecting Halloween. And what we got was Halloween 2 by Rob Zombie. The other Halloween 2, the shitty Halloween 2, because there's two Halloween 2s. This is Halloween 2B, I guess. The whole thing was shit. The ending of this movie was definitely shit. I thought the whole thing was shit. The psychological parts were shit. Everything was shit. But it's better than Halloween Resurrection by a nose. Just had to go cut up apple slices for my oldest daughter, Michaela Myers. Just kidding. Anyway, that brings us to the most recent trilogy. There was a long time there between Halloween 2 and Halloween 2018 that it just seemed like, you know, maybe we were done. Maybe it was dead. Maybe they had truly, well and truly killed it. The 1-2 punch of Halloween Resurrection, followed by, in short order, just a few years later, 7 years later, with Halloween 2, with really Halloween 1 being kind of a middling effort anyway. In between those two, it just felt like, you know, the last couple of movies weren't that great. I mean, really, Halloween arguably had not been a great franchise since 1998 with H2O. I think that was the last installment in Halloween that was really pretty well received. And, you know, so in the mid-20-teens, we're looking back thinking it's been almost 20 years since we've had a decent Halloween movie. I mean, maybe they are well and truly dead if it's been 15 years since the last decently received Halloween movie. You know, maybe it's just done. And maybe that's for the best. I mean, those of us who are adults, you know, you might have thought circa 2012, 2013, when there was no third Rob Zombie movie coming, you might have thought maybe it's for the best that they put this one to bed. Maybe it's all right that it's gone now. It's over, but, you know, we still have our memories. Anyway, that all changed when they announced that David Gordon Green and Danny McBride, of all people, were doing a Halloween. And I remember Danny McBride from, like, he's in Tropic Thunder. He was in Eastbound and Down. I mean, he seemed like an odd person to be writing a Halloween movie, but whatever. I was willing to go with it. We didn't have high expectations. I think I can speak for those of us Halloween fans who've been fans for a while and remember seeing some of these older films in theaters. We weren't expecting much. We had just seen, I mean, the century of Halloween movies up to that point, the 21st century of Halloween movies included Halloween Resurrection with Busta Rhymes, followed by Rob Zombie's Halloween and Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. That was what we had for 21st century Halloween films up until the point where they made Halloween 2018. So we did not have high expectations. We had very low expectations, and I think, if anything, that might have worked very well for Halloween 2018, because I remember going to see it when it opened and being very much impressed by Halloween 2018. I don't like that it has the same exact name as the first one, like Halloween 2018, which necessitates that I announce the year every time I mention one of those movies. So when I say Halloween, I don't have to say like the original Halloween, the OG Halloween, because there's actually 3 movies named Halloween. There's Halloween 1978, there's Rob Zombie's Halloween from '07, and then there's Halloween 2018. So the fact that there's three of the films in this franchise have the same fucking name, again, could we just use numbers, please, and not reuse the same number like Halloween 2B used the same number? Anyway, the whole thing's confusing. It's got 18 timelines and we need a universe. But I don't like the idea that now I have to say Halloween 78, Halloween 2018, Halloween '07. Otherwise, nobody really knows which one I'm talking about. I could be talking about any one of 3 movies. It doesn't help that they've all got the same characters of Laurie Strode and Michael Myers in them. I do overall very much enjoy Halloween 2018 as a follow-up. You know, accepting the fact that it's a different timeline from Halloween 2A and that it's a different timeline from H2O and God, thank Jesus, it's a different timeline from Resurrection and the Rob Zombie films. I mean, accepting this as the follow-up to the 1978 film, I think is not too bad. Um, I like the Halloween trick-or-treating scenes. I like that long tracking shot that was really brilliantly executed. I think this was one of the really, the kind of the first Halloween films, like really looks very, very good too. It really has a kind of a beautiful, kind of sumptuous look to it as well. I mean, I did like the textures of Halloween 4 for sure. I like the way the first Halloween looked, but you know, out of all the Halloween sequels at least, this one really did look the best out of all the Halloween sequels. Again, not too flashy, but a little bit more flashy with that long tracking shot. I mean, you don't do this like long kind of Goodfellas style tracking shot without kind of like, "All right, I'm a little proud of myself." You didn't have that same level of pizzazz in the first Halloween. So, you know, it's a little bit of a departure there, but it was fine. It was fine as a sequel. I didn't love that Michael's doctor, Dr. Sartain, was basically the mastermind behind this whole movie, but oh well, it's okay. I mean, in some ways, I think it was smart of David Gordon Green and Danny McBride to ignore everything except the first one in 1978. I mean, not only does that get rid of the incest baby, but really it gets rid of a lot of stuff that you really just don't want to have to worry about. You don't want to have to worry about it as a fan if you haven't seen Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. If you haven't seen it in 20 years, you don't have to. You don't have to worry about it. And then as a filmmaker, you also don't have to worry about all of the various continuities and tying it all together. I think doing away with the sister angle is fine. You know, it makes a lot of sense to undo that sister angle, but it also makes Michael's whole thing seem a lot less focused on Laurie. I mean, ever since the first one, he hones in on Laurie pretty early on in the first Halloween, and he stays pretty laser focused on her for the rest of Halloween and Halloween Part 2. So it made sense that in Part 4, you can't get Jamie Lee Curtis back, but we can write a daughter for her that is now also a blood relative of Michael Myers. And since he can't get Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie Strode's character, because she's dead in a car crash now, he will go after his niece. And so it made sense that Michael Myers would like go after these characters. But when you remove that sister angle, there's now no longer a relationship between Michael Myers and Laurie Strode, and there's no indication that Michael even remembers Laurie Strode or that he has any kind of grudge or personal beef against her, that he wants to get back at her. There's really no indication of that whatsoever. And yet, because of franchise filmmaking, you have a legion of fans that want Jamie Lee Curtis back, and they want to see the conflict develop or conclude between Laurie Strode and Michael Myers. So you have this fan expectation that you kind of have to meet. At the same time, that expectation puts things on the filmmakers that maybe don't serve their vision necessarily. So you need that Dr. Sartain character now to sort of shoehorn everything together, to kind of bring these characters together, because he becomes the proxy. The Dr. Sartain character becomes the proxy for the fans who want to see Michael pushed towards Laurie Strode again, and these two characters come together on screen again. Well, how is that going to happen? If they're not siblings anymore, then Michael Myers doesn't have an inherent motivation to seek out Laurie. Well, now we need this fan proxy. He wants them together as much as we do, so that's why he's the proxy for us, the fans. So the Dr. Sartain character is somewhat necessary. He's like a narrative necessity, and he feels like a narrative necessity, even though when Michael Myers kills him, that was a pretty savage moment. You know, he's just begging Michael Myers to speak. Michael says nothing and just crushes the guy's whole head like a pumpkin. And that was a moment that the theater was like, oh, shit. I think even the white people in the theater were swearing at the screen at that point. They were like, oh, shit, holy shit, he stomped on a motherfucker's head. It was wild. I was fairly accepting as well of Laurie Strode's kind of Sarah Connor transformation. It was a little bit over the top, I think, particularly in hindsight, like seeing how that carried through kills and ends. It was a little bit over the top. I think the Laurie Strode from Halloween H2O, who kind of carried forward this PTSD and had this very much like this ongoing stress response to Halloween, made a lot of sense, but she sort of handled it in kind of like a realistic middle-aged woman sort of way. She didn't turn into Sarah Connor from Terminator 2. And Laurie Strode, of course, in this trilogy and Halloween, particularly in Halloween 2018, very much is that, like, she's this damaged character that sort of just turned into like a Navy SEAL, and she's a badass, but at the same time, you do have to kind of question the The realism. Like, I think it works overall. I'm willing to accept it, but at the same time, when I push back a little bit, I'm like, okay, this lady's 70 and she's, like knife in her teeth, like, hand-to-hand combat. It just seems a little bit, like a little bit much that she would devote her entire life to being a total badass in the off chance that maybe Michael Myers escapes and then possibly her psychotic doctor steers Michael towards her. And she built this whole elaborate trap house out to, like, not that kind of trap house, but a house filled with traps to contain Michael Myers. The idea is to keep him in, right? Like, he would break into houses in the OG Halloween. They just wanted to keep him out. You don't want that guy getting in. You don't want him breaking in, because then he's going to come after you. He's going to come after the kids. The reversal in Halloween 2018 that turned that notion on its head was that she wants Michael Myers in. She wants him inside because now she can activate all her traps. Those traps weren't for keeping her safe. Those were for locking him in. And then that whole house was basically built out of balsa wood, so it would go up like that. She basically built that house as a trap for Michael Myers. And so I did appreciate that kind of the turnabout on that convention from the first one. They didn't repeat it, but they brought it in and they did something kind of new with it that I think was interesting. So I think 2018 really does work as a follow-up to Halloween 78, but I don't necessarily think it works as kicking off a new trilogy. I think Halloween 2018 was very well conceived. I think it was very well executed. I appreciated both the vision and the execution of it. It is actually one of my favorite Halloween films for that reason. However, I do think that using it as a springboard to a new trilogy there was less meat on the bone of kills and ends. I'll get to those in a second. I do like the turn of the tables, though, in Halloween 2018. I loved that Judy Greer's character duped Michael. She's acting like she can't, she's acting so weak and she's acting like she's freaking out. And as an audience member, the first time I believed it too. I was like, oh my God, she's pathetic. Come on, I was thinking the same thing that Michael was. And so when he steps out of the shadow and she's like, gotcha, boom, I was like, oh shit. Like, it was very much a rewarding, I think, moment. And so I think the film strings together enough of those rewarding moments that it's really very, very enjoyable. And, it's fun to see the women, maybe more so Laurie Strode, but her daughter and granddaughter certainly step up at the end there too. And to see these women kind of meeting Michael where he's at. I mean, these are sort of like the archetypal victims. These are the girls that the slasher would chop up and kill. And to see them like meeting him where he's at and, utilizing their practice and their training and their wits and to survive instead of just like dumb luck and plot armor is usually what keeps these broads alive until the very end of the movie, or like the beginning of the next movie. Like, Rachel survives Halloween Part 4, but then gets whacked out pretty early on in Halloween Part 5, just because that's what happens to final girls. They're like the first girl of the next movie. So it's really just dumb luck and plot armor that keeps a lot of these broads alive, but not so much in Halloween 2018. You really get the sense that they achieved their victory. I mean, they very much earned it. And it was very satisfying, I think. The other thing I appreciate about Halloween 2018 that doesn't get said very much, actually. I think it doesn't get discussed very much in appreciation of this film, but it very much is something that we should appreciate Halloween 2018 for. It's that it came out at a time when the MCU was going so strong and everything seemed like they wanted to just be the MCU because it was so financially successful. And so there was so much injection of like this tongue-in-cheek kind of comedy. There was a lot of humor being shoved into non-comedy films, action films and horror films that had a lot of levity and a lot of comedy. And Danny McBride, of all people, I mean, knowing who he is and what he does, the fact that Danny McBride and David Gordon Green gave us a very straight horror film that was very tonally consistent and didn't play for easy laughs. I mean, there were a few laughs in there. There was the white babysitter that had the black kid that she was babysitting. And I think, we get a few laughs. The audience gets a few laughs from that dynamic. So it's not like the first one, the original Halloween that's like very straight. This one's still quite a straight horror film that maintains this good tone of horror. There's not too much levity to pull us away from that horror throughout the film, and especially for a film coming out in 2018 at the height of the MCU when everything was funny and Tony Stark and Guardians of the Galaxy and everybody's cracking jokes and no one's serious. The fact that they still managed to make a serious horror film, I think, is an achievement, particularly for that year. And I think if this had been one and done, I would have been very happy with this as a follow-up. And even the closure with the ending, I would have been very happy if they had just left it here. I feel like the way it ended, it would have been fine. Picking up after this was, as I said, a little bit of a problem. Obviously, that doesn't come until we get to Halloween Kills. And I just gotta say, Halloween Kills, say evil dies tonight one more time, motherfucker. I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker. Say evil dies tonight one more goddamn time, to quote the late, great Jules. I like how they turned Michael Myers loose. I think that was the idea behind Halloween Kills, is just let him go, let the man cook. But on the other hand, when you consider what he survived in Halloween 2018 as a 65-year-old man, getting hit by a car that was going like pretty good speed. It wasn't 60 miles an hour, but it wasn't 5 miles an hour either. It really should have left his sarcopenia having ass unable to walk for the rest of his life. Just the getting hit by the car in Halloween 2018, his pelvis should have been pulverized. He was shot, I think it was the cheek. It wasn't a big one, but he got shot in the head by Judy Greer's character. He got some fingers blown off by Laurie. He had to have inhaled a fuck ton of smoke from that fire before he was freed by the firefighters, those unlucky firefighters. But he really should not have been nearly as formidable as he was and durable as he was in Kills, especially as he takes so much abuse from the townspeople. We're talking about a character that should have been roughly 65 years old. David Gordon Green and Danny McBride want us to believe that he is just a human being. He's not powered by satanic energy or a cult or reincarnation or anything like that. He's just a normal 65-year-old man. Do you know what 65-year-old men look like? Google 65-year-old man. Google Lemon Party and tell me what a 65-year-old man looks like. And tell me if he's able to be run over and shot and beat up and still get up and waste everybody, because that's what he does. They want Michael to be a human being, not a supernatural entity. But at the same time, how much beating can a senior citizen take? It's like, it just seemed ridiculous by the end of the film that he's just able to get up, kill everybody, kill Judy Greer's character, and then boom, he's all good in the hood. I don't understand how a human being could just take all of that and manage to slaughter an entire mob after just having the fuck beaten out of him. The whole point of the movie was to like randomly throw original characters from the first movie in to kill them. You know, they brought back Marion Chambers, Tommy Doyle, Lonnie Elam. Get your ass away from there, Lonnie. That Lonnie. Even former Sheriff Brackett. And they just, you know, it's just bringing off all these legacy characters to just kill, 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 kill. I guess that's where the name Halloween Kills comes from. But it just felt like 2 hours of fan service as a result. It's like, hey, you remember that guy? Yeah, the mailman in that movie lived. Let's bring him back randomly and kill him. The mailman, we're going to bring him back and we're going to kill him. Remember that dog that was, remember that guy that told Michael Myers in the first movie to get off his lawn while he was drinking coffee in the morning? Yeah, well, he happened to be in that mob and he got killed by Michael Myers on Halloween Kills. It really did feel like fan service, how deep they were like pulling some of these characters out. And it's ridiculous. You know, the movie ends, I think the biggest problem with Halloween Kills is its ending. They end by setting up this huge kind of monumental confrontation between Laurie and Michael. She's walking out of the hospital like, oh shit, it's about to go down. Kind of cliffhanger ending. She's like, oh man, I'm gonna get him. That lynch mob couldn't get Michael, but I'm gonna get him. This 75-year-old lady, I'm gonna get him. Grandma's gonna get him. You know, the young 38-year-old dudes couldn't get him with the baseball bats, but I'm gonna get him. The whole thing's ridiculous, but it sets up this thing that really, you know, then we open up Halloween Ends. When the next time we see her, she's writing some terrible Blogspot level autobiography and burning a pumpkin pie. I mean, she's like a Zen grandma in Halloween Ends. Michael killed her daughter and he's still out there, but she's like all good. She's found Tibetan Buddhism or some shit. She doesn't need revenge. She's let it go. Now that he's hurt her worse than he ever has, and he's not locked up. I mean, it's funny when he hadn't killed any of her family, and he was locked up in an asylum, and she's training like Sarah Connor for years and years and years in order to face him. Now he's out there. She could bump into him at any time. He could resume his killing spree at any moment, and she's like, whatever, I'm good. Let's fuck up some apple pie or pumpkin pie or whatever. I think Halloween Ends really brings us back to, as we're discussing the last film, it brings us back to, again, more examples of the problems of franchise filmmaking. I mean, they really went for something new with this film. I mean, they really tried to do something very different with Halloween Ends. And they tell you that with the credits. The titles being identical to the Halloween 3 titles tells you they're doing something very different. But it's not what necessarily people wanted from a Michael Myers film. I appreciate them swinging for the fences, but ultimately, like I was saying a moment ago, people have expectations for a Halloween film. There's a certain thing that people expect when they buy tickets for a Halloween film at this point in time. You know, because they didn't go for the anthology thing with the second movie. We're basically married to the Michael Myers concept. So what we get with Halloween Ends is it's kind of a bipolar film. There's a lot to love about Halloween Ends, in my opinion. The score and photography are both exceptional. It's the look and sound of Halloween Ends is phenomenal. On the other hand, it's supposed to be this big final showdown between Laurie and Michael, but then it just really winds up being another Halloween film analogizing evil as a kind of cancer, something that we can spread under the right conditions, and becomes about this other character, Corey Cunningham. You know, at the point where Michael Myers is about 70, the character would have been about 70 years old in Halloween Ends. It makes sense to try to pass things on to a new, younger character in Corey Cunningham. He's a young man. He's kind of in the prime of his, his health. He's capable of doing the things that a younger Michael did back in 1978. But you're just going to kill off Corey at the end anyway. So what sense does it make to divert attention away from Michael, put all of this narrative focus on Corey, and then kill him and still have to tie up your Michael Myers loose end? It really just, it ruins, I think, the feel of Halloween Ends, that they want to make this kind of statement and follow this vision about Corey and the town and the evil and how that has spread over the town, how it hangs over the town like a fog. But then, you still have this like final confrontation with Michael Myers that we promised everybody that we got to shoehorn in somehow. So it feels a little bit like they created this whole new movie that they were passionate about, but it wasn't necessarily what the characters wanted. So we got to force Michael Myers in there somehow. And I think that really becomes the film's ultimate undoing. It's really what keeps the film from, I think, entering this really high echelon of quality. Just like with Halloween 4, they kind of puss out on passing the mantle of the Shape on to this next character, because they just whack him out. He's done, he's gone, and they don't whack him off, they whack him out. Two very different things, right? Very small difference phonetically, whacking off and whacking out, but they whack him out, not off. That's Allison's job. Anyway, Corey Cunningham's only real purpose, I think, in Halloween Ends, it was to bring Michael and Laurie together again, right? Because again, we're in this diegesis where Michael has no special reason to pursue Laurie. Dr. Sartain had to bring them together in Halloween 2018, and now in Halloween Ends, we need something else that's going to bring Laurie and Michael together. So this character that they're mutually acquainted with, this Corey Cunningham character, is going to bring Michael back into Laurie's world for this final showdown. But it really just felt very tacked on at the end. What was this weird shit with Michael seemingly like mind melding with Corey and seeing Corey's experiences? At the very least, they make it clear that Michael can somehow recognize that Corey contains the same kind of evil as him, and so he lets Corey go. He doesn't kill Corey as a result. He even becomes kind of a weird mentor to Corey for a little bit of the film. And it's weird. It's like, again, Green and McBride are trying to tell us that Michael is not supernatural. He's a normal human being until they need him to do some supernatural shit. Then he can just read other people's thoughts and shit. When he grabs them by the neck, he can see what you're thinking. He can look inside your brain. It's another thing where they need this Corey Cunningham character, but everything that they've established does not indicate that Michael Myers can see this evil inside of Corey. And so it doesn't make any sense that he would allow Corey to live at that point. But he has to in order for the rest of the film to happen. With both Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends, it seems like they're based on somewhat thin ideas, particularly with regard to Michael and Laurie. This feels especially evident in Halloween Ends, since most of the film is about Corey. Most of the film follows Corey and Allison. And that promised Michael-Laurie showdown almost seems like a footnote tacked on at the end, because they promised it to fans, more so than like it felt like a natural conclusion to the film. At that point, it didn't really feel like a natural conclusion to the film. It felt like Laurie was over Michael. It felt like Michael was pretty much a foot and a half in the grave. He was just about dead. He got punked out by Corey. This little Corey Cunningham punked Michael. That was some bullshit too. That pissed off most people, including me, watching him throw Michael around and take the mask off of Michael and shit. That was some bullshit. That said, I like the general theme of the film. I like the idea that evil can kind of spread, that it can be kind of passed on. I like the idea of passing on the Michael Myers mantle from person to person, even if it's lightly supernatural, that it just sort of hops from person to person. This like grander evil, the evil that would be connected to like the season and the death, and there's that sort of natural cycle of death being included in this natural cycle of life and death, and the idea that there is this kind of natural, almost spiritual force of Mother Nature that is like culling, and it is evil and it is death. But it kind of goes from person to person. It's grander than just Michael Myers or just Jamie Lloyd or just Corey Cunningham. It's this more kind of grand aspect, primal aspect of nature. And I think it can actually work for a story like Halloween. But again, they puss out with it and they kill off the character instead of trying to run with that Corey Cunningham character and trying to pursue that particular theme into future films. So spin-offs or continuations where Michael's evil has infected others could allow Michael to linger like a ghost or like a hallucination without making him an actual supernatural entity. So in some ways they could kind of have what they want a little bit there too. And that's what they could have done back in the 80s with Jamie Lloyd. They could have done that here in Halloween Ends with Corey Cunningham characters, but they don't, and whatever, that's fine. Halloween Ends is the type of story that I think could have worked very well if the Halloween franchise had stuck with its guns and remained an anthology. Since my main problems with Halloween Ends, they stem from it being shoehorned into what had been sold to us as a thrilling final confrontation between Michael and Laurie. If you had been unfettered by that narrative necessity like Halloween 3 was, you really could have told a very compelling story, I think, with the Corey Cunningham character and you know, his treatment, and then him obviously his response to that treatment being very violent, I think could have been a very interesting Halloween set story to tell. But unfortunately it just got mixed up in the legacy, the franchise, and Halloween would have been better if it was free of those expectations, those audience expectations. But I do gladly rewatch Halloween Ends. My wife suggested we watch it about a week ago, so we watched Halloween Ends about a week ago. I'll gladly rewatch it every few years. This is not a mandatory every year watch for me, but every couple of years I'll rewatch it for its merits. Again, it's a really well-made film, some excellent kills and some really gory parts in it, which make it a lot of fun to watch, I think. You know, you got to separate yourself from its imperfections, but it's all right. In most cases, we have imperfect films because the execution isn't on par with the vision. You know, the vision exceeds the execution. The execution is kind of amateurish. You know, I think a lot of those like Vinegar Syndrome films where it's like great concept, great vision, but the execution is kind of meh. I think you have sort of the opposite with Halloween Ends in that it's really executed. The production is beautiful, but the narrative, vision, and scope is what holds Halloween Ends back with those, you know, the Michael Myers, Laurie storyline having to be there again. And so what's next for Halloween? Anybody's guess. Hopefully it's nothing. There's 13 films in the Halloween franchise, and I think they should stop there. Just leave it at that number because it's perfect. 13. They won't. Even though it's an appropriate number, they won't leave it there. I've mentioned already the problems inherent to franchise filmmaking, so I'm not going to repeat those points. I will add that the reason franchise filmmaking exists is the same reason restaurant franchises exist. Consumer recognition and familiarity built over decades means that there's a fan base. There's a built-in fan base of people who are already aware of the brand. They recognize the brand. There's brand recognition. Michael Myers has a built-in fan base, which means that hypothetically the studio can count on selling tickets to that fan base automatically, just by virtue of having Michael Myers in the thing. And so that is the inherent value to a studio of a franchise. That's why studios will always go back to the well with remakes and reboots and all that shit. They will strip mine a franchise until it is entirely deforested, and then they'll go back a decade later to see if anything's grown back for them to harvest again. So they're not going to leave anything on the table. They will eventually come back to the Halloween films. Miramax is now going to be producing and or distributing these. They've acquired the rights to a Halloween franchise, television rights, and I'm sure you guys already know about that. That's not news to anybody. It's been that way for a couple of years now, and it seems to be stalling. So hopefully they don't end up doing anything with it, because Miramax is the same ones that gave us Halloween Resurrection. So we don't need more of that. That's for sure. So with any luck, maybe we'll never see the television series. That television series will never see the light of day. But time will tell. Anyway, I'll end it right there. I've probably talked long enough. This is probably a pretty long-ass video, so I want to thank you Halloweirdos for hanging out with me on this day of Halloween. I hope you guys have had a lovely spooky season. I'm sorry it's over, but hey, don't be sad it's over. Smile because it happened, okay? We'll get another one next year, and now we get to have November to just watch a whole bunch of Kung Fu movies. It's Kung Fu Movie November. We're watching nothing but samurai movies and Kung Fu movies. Jackie Chan and Jet Li all damn day. These guys would have whooped Michael Myers' ass. They wouldn't have let him get away with that shit in Haddonfield. You need to bring Jackie Chan's ass to Haddonfield and have him camp out and teach Kung Fu in Haddonfield, and they wouldn't have had no problems with Michael Myers anyway. I'd like to thank these folks. Extra spooky thanks to you folks for being patrons. I don't have much left, but I will chug it in your honor, you patrons. And for those of you guys who ain't on that list, you better get right. Make it your New Year's resolution. Make it your November resolution. We're not close enough to New Year's yet. Make it your November resolution. Get your ass on that list. Get your ass to Mars. I love you. Catch you in November, fools. Peace. I told you there wasn't much left. Ooh.